Leadership isn't just changing, it's evolving in ways we're only just beginning to imagine. And women, we're not playing this game anymore. We're the ones reshaping the entire field, building models, movements, and businesses that serve more than just a few. On the She Leads podcast, you'll hear real conversations with women who've broken through all kinds of barriers: revenue, identity, borders, and expectations. There's no sugarcoating here, just the truth, told by those who are living it. I'm Adrienne Garland, entrepreneur, strategist, educator, and creator of live experiences, gathering women leaders together for over a decade. And this is the She Leads podcast. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the She Leads podcast. Before I introduce you to our next guest, I'd like you to take just 2 minutes to give the show a 5-star rating and review on Apple or Spotify. This action is so important for the show's visibility and the visibility of each and every one of our guests. The women on this show share their journeys, wisdom, and lessons so you can go further, faster, wealthier, and with more ease. So if you're interested in seeing more successful women leaders and entrepreneurs in this world, like I am, then please take this easy step to support women everywhere. Thank you so much in advance for helping to share our incredible show with more people. Now, my next guest is coming to us from literally the other side of the world. Her name is Penelope Barton, and she's the CEO of Crimson Global Academy and co-founder of Crimson Academies, where she leads a portfolio of innovative schools that are redefining what education will look like in a digital-first world. Penelope is a pioneer of hybrid and online education models and serves thousands of students across more than 70 countries. Her work sits at the intersection of education, technology, and AI, where AI is a practical partner to educators and supports personalized learning rather than replacing the human elements of teaching. She's an active member in the AI and founder ecosystem and is a global speaker on AI-enabled education, education reform, and building scalable, student-centered learning models online. From growing up in rural New Zealand to leading one of the most ambitious global edtech portfolios in the world, Penelope is helping shape how the next generation learns, lives, and leads. I cannot wait to welcome you to our show, Penelope. So happy you're here.
Thank you for having me. Wow, I feel like it's once you read out a bio like that, it's hard to then, oh gosh, am I going to live up to that? I have some poignant things to say.
I know that you will have some very poignant things to say. So let's start at the beginning. Let's start in rural New Zealand. Take us there. Not many people have, there are definitely listeners from New Zealand, but the majority of the listeners of this She Leads podcast are Canadians and Americans. So take us around the other side of the world and let us know. You said you grew up in rural New Zealand and now you are in the founder world, the AI, the technology world. How did it all start?
Yeah. So when we say rural New Zealand, there was a big city which had maybe 80,000 people in it, and then smaller city which had around anywhere between sort of 5 and 10,000, and I fluctuated between the two. So quite small in the scale of things, but near a city, so that's nice. So I grew up down there, and at that point in time, and this was pre-internet. Internet was coming out when I was going through school, but you weren't really connected into the rest of the world. That was a very foreign concept. You were essentially surrounded by those that were nearest to you. In your proximity were your friends, your inspiration, outside of that, in the library. And then you'd hear these amazing stories. And then I remember when the internet came out and you just suddenly had these global connections. I moved cities, I studied, I graduated, I kept moving into these larger cities and was fortunate in the places that I worked to be able to spend time overseas and have worked in a number of different countries now. And there's always been this connection point that I've thought about is how do we create this borderless ecosystem? How do we ensure that a student anywhere in the world
Mm.
has access to this global community, has access to these incredible teachers? Again, when you're in a smaller place, you are, if you've got a teacher that uh, might be really hard to recruit. It's very hard to recruit teachers. So they may be the English teacher, the maths teacher, the science teacher. They
Yes.
may love one of them. They may not love any of them.
Right.
And so that, and that is your teacher. And then how do we create this world in which you can have these passionate teachers and their subjects connected to you from anywhere in the world? How can
Mm.
you build these communities and, friendships across borders, through countries? And so this is not something that I had growing up and then just had exposure to. And I just have this desire to look at how we can bring this back now and create this world for students. And someone's postcode should not dictate what their outcome looks like.
Mm.
And so what I'm trying to do on scale is create that sort of dynamic for them. And so we have Crimson Global Academy, which we launched 6 years ago, which was our first foray into the space.
Mm.
And prior to education, I worked majority in technology companies that were going global. So as this global technology bent, we started Crimson Global Academy, the online school, 6 years ago, with this exact premise of how do we connect amazing teachers to students anywhere in the world.
Mm.
And that's going really strong now with students in over 70 countries. We had 144,000 classes last year
Wow.
that we ran. So it's almost 24/7 at this point. And then we started Crimson Academies, which is more of our venture studio for schools, essentially, is their best way to describe it, because it's, we either build or we buy schools that are trying to do something different in education and run that as one collaborative group. So we now have 5 schools within the group, from anywhere from ages 5 through 18, primary, online, in person. We have specialist schools for neurodivergent students, a full range. But what ties them all together have been assembling this group of those that are looking to do something a little bit different, redesign education for today's kids and their future,
Mm.
not the past.
Yes.
Education is largely traditional. How do we build that future with those students for them? And all of the schools have that.
So I just want to kind of rewind a little
Yeah.
bit, because I think that you talk about this like it's an everyday occurrence, and it is for you, but it's sort of revolutionary what you're saying. So I want to, give that the time that it deserves. I wonder to myself, there are so many areas around the world that, technology, it's difficult to get technology into some of these areas. And we saw with, mobile devices that sort of leapfrogged over some of the other technology that we were exposed to as we were, going through school. It went straight to mobile. How do you get the teachers and the technology into the hands, or I don't even know what it is, of these students that are in these rural areas? What does that look like?
We're fortunate now, and I'm not sponsored by Starlink, but a lot of our families use Starlink to be able to get satellite internet wherever
Mm.
they are. I have families that are, living and traveling on boats, and they're still able to
Sure.
join school 5 days a week, and they have this, or, they
Ooh.
have mobile, as you say. And it's, when you think about that from the teacher side, it's really been this huge unlock for us, because teaching traditionally is something that you go to a physical building
Yeah.
to do, and you are there 5 days a week, and you are sort of locked in. But being able to hire and recruit teachers really from anywhere in the world to work on hours that suit them, because we are supporting a global student base, has been huge. And so we've had teachers, when we talk about, rural, even moving countries, we've had teachers that, might live in, the middle of New York and are now living in Spain, for instance. Or we've had, teachers that might be here in New Zealand and now they're living by a beach in Thailand,
Mhm.
because as long as they can stay connected, they can do their exact same role. And so it's been quite this unlock as well for our teachers, and then for our families. Yes, as long as they have mobile or satellite internet, they can access. Um, And that's been, yeah, for a lot of our families, that hasn't been too much of a barrier. As we move more into our most recent school is completely government funded, and so it's tuition free.
Wow.
And with that, we have more students that, may not have access. And so we've been partnering with community groups and libraries. And, how do we create spaces in which they can get to easily for
Mm-hmm.
them, where they could still access our school? Yeah, through to much wilder ideas that I have using,
Mm.
technology we have today. You've got mobile, you've got drones that can provide internet. How do we make the
Mm.
most of that?
How and are these, I mean, the schools are a separate conversation, but some of the academy, is that something that a school might bolt on to something that they're doing already? Can you just describe, exactly what it is?
Yes. So uh, at this point, it almost feels like a full menu offering, because we
Mm.
have online and in person students join us either full time or part time. And part time, they students do this out of they're looking to take additional subjects. Maybe there's a specialist subject they're interested in. Due to their training commitments, they can't do their full study. They join us for that, or they are just looking to accelerate because we place based off ability, not age. So those are some of the reasons people join us for part time. And then within that, students can join us in a group class, a small group class
Mm.
online, or they can join us fully one to one. So one student, one teacher, their entire curriculum delivery. Yeah. And so that's something we launched 2 years ago. Again, just more option for students. And now about half of our students have that at least as a learning mode for one or more subjects. And
Hmm.
that's, they really want to accelerate in maths, or they may need more support, whatever that may be. They can get through it incredibly quickly and really personalized to them because it's just one to one.
Hmm.
And then other subjects that require more discussion and debate, maybe in English literature, they may opt to do those in a group setting.
Sure.
So they can do a mixture of any of those. And then, yes, we have partnerships with schools where we can also do the same thing, but en masse for schools. So we have a number of partner schools that we work with. They largely, it's been so two reasons: one, teacher shortage, or two, additional offering. And so curriculum, we offer APs, we have the British curriculum, we have the New Zealand curriculum now, so this multi-curriculum choice as well. And
Mm.
so they can kind of join us to bolt on an additional curriculum their students can do, preparing them for whichever pathway they want to take. And then also teacher shortages. So we deliver some maths and sciences for a school. We deliver advanced placement courses for another school. We deliver, middle school education for a traveling school.
Yeah.
It's quite broad in terms of really anyone that's looking to sort of bolster that education side, for whatever means, can partner with us. So yeah, we have B2B, B2C.
Wow.
We're operating in every market. We have, yeah, physical, we have online, we have full time, we have part time, group classes, one to one learning mode. We've really tried to break down, as if we looked at education and trying to break down, when you're trying to transform an existing industry, right? You have to start quite similar to what it looks like and then start to break down, okay, how can we do this? Students should have choice over, how they study, when they study, what they study, how they study. And
Mm.
so we've taken all of those elements and gone, okay, well, what they study, they can now have multi-curriculum. When they study, they can schedule it themselves over
Mm.
7 days and whichever time works for them. You know, they can study in a part-time or group class, they can study one-to-one, they can study in like all of these sort of different elements we've looked to break down so that ultimately students can build education and schooling that works for them.
I'm fascinated that you're able to offer so many different options and able to scale all of that in all of these different countries with all of these different curriculums. How were you able to build out something like this that is so flexible? And I mean, this is not a software. This is human
No.
beings. This is programs. There's so many different variables that like are colliding, and yet you're in 70 countries. How is this even possible?
Yeah. So I guess two parts to that. One, the technology side. Yeah, it's all human and face to face, be that online or in person. But the technology that we've built really supports the logistics of this
Mm.
because of the scale. There is a lot of complexity in terms of managing all of the classes, all the different streams, all the different curriculum. There's a lot that goes into that. And so we use technology to support on that side.
Mm.
But in terms of the scale, it's really, I mean, it's taken us six-ish years to get to this point. But we started with 2 years of high school, only one learning mode. You could only join us
Yes.
full time.
Right.
And then we've just, over the last 6 years, based off what students have needed and what they've been looking for, we've just kept adding on from there. And so it looks now this huge array of choice and this education system that I love and what we sort of envisaged could be possible.
Mm.
But it really started from, let's start with where we know, we can support students these last 2 years of high school in this one curriculum. And then we've built out from there pretty methodically over the last 6 years to get to where we are now. But that scale has been, very small steps towards something, even though it looks, this big behemoth now. At the time, it was always just, okay, now primary school. Let's do primary school.
Sure.
Let's look at another learning mode. And now you've got this full kind of ages, full K through 12.
Now, are schools around the world, and do you have this available in the United States? Okay.
Yes.
So, okay.
Mhm.
So, I mean, I say this on the podcast a lot. So if anybody listening, if I sound like a broken record, sorry, but I love doing this. I teach entrepreneurship at NYU and also at Rice University to undergrad and grad students. And always say, oh gosh, I wish that as I was going through school, that we were taught things that actually help our lives. Entrepreneurship being one of them. I think everybody needs to know how to start a business and how to grow it and scale it and sell it and, be self-sufficient and all of that kind of stuff. And that's just not taught in school. And then the second thing is really around finance and understanding, how to build wealth so that you're not just, working and paying your bills and just surviving. I don't think that we were put on this earth to work ourselves to the grave and go from, hand to mouth. We definitely are much more creative as human beings. So my question, I know that the school system still has not evolved to helping people to get into a space when they graduate that is, creative, that allows them to build wealth, that are training them for jobs that are existing today. It's still very much, memorization and things that you can just look up online. How is education changing, or is it not? And is that why you think that what you're building is so successful? And do you see the education system changing anytime soon? I know that was a loaded question.
I would love to see more of the education system change, and I see pockets of change. I mean, where any change runs into hurdles is that ultimately education is people, and people need to be brought into that. And you can't just tell 1,000 teachers or 30,000 teachers in a district, you now need to teach this, right? So see pockets of it, but know that it's really hard to actually deliver that at scale and get people brought in and make real change. But I completely agree, though, with the premise. And so what we look to do in our schools is, how do we prepare kids for their future? And also being humble enough to know that we don't know 100% what that's going to look like.
Yeah.
And so we have options within our curriculum that are much more traditional. And for some of our students that are looking to go off to academia, and it gives them such a strong foundation for that. And so in those curriculums, we look at, okay, how do we wrap these extracurriculars around you? One of our most popular extracurriculars is our stock investing club.
Oh, yeah.
And so, we give students, a portfolio. They build that. They run kind of competitions through the end of the year to look at who's had the largest growth. And so we wrap that around in our extracurriculars and electives for them. And then we have, other programs that lean a lot more into that. And for students that want more of those tangible skills, we have courses from, intro to small business, entrepreneurship, Bitcoin, finance.
Mm.
Absolutely, everyone should know how to do a budget. Social media marketing.
Mm.
We run entrepreneurship programs and clubs where students are building companies, pitching them back,
Love
getting
it.
in that comfort zone of knowing that like that may not be the best product or even the final product, but just getting in that comfort of I've got an idea. How do I test my assumptions and how do I build something that serves that need and present it? And so we run those entrepreneurship clubs as well.
Oh, I love that.
And then we've been looking in sort of our pilot here in New Zealand. So all of these programs are global, including the US, which is one of our fastest growing
Oh,
countries, which is amazing. And so we'll continue to grow there. But what we've been testing as a pilot in New Zealand before we look to launch a similar one in the US is going even a step further into primary school and what the future skills look like.
yeah.
And our future skills curriculum there. So we have kids as young as 7 years old that are building their own apps at the moment, and we'll be presenting those back. That are we've paired, but we've looked at okay, so these kids have these amazing ideas. How do we help them bring it to life? How do we bring product thinking and bring these masterclasses to them? How do we pair them with a public speaking coach? And so they're getting, we've got public speaking courses that run a couple of times a week. So they can build that because it's great to have an idea. And these younger kids have these incredible ideas. Being able to articulate the idea is what's going to stand in the way for them. And so, I mean, imagine as young as 7, if they're getting this kind of like idea of failing, of building things, of presenting, of having that kind of wraparound support, what they're going to be able to go on and do. And then we've also looked at that sort of multidisciplinary nature. And so for all of our students, we look at how can we just expose them to as many things as possible?
Yeah.
Because as you move into the future, it's going to be that adaptability. It's going to be that cross-section between subjects. It's going to be the fact that the student is really fascinated by space. And then, they've done this really interesting thing over here on like ethics. And then they were just doing this piece on robotics and just bringing it all together. And so in all of our schools, we're looking at what does that breadth look like, and how do we support them in gaining that to set them up, and then at the same time that critical thinking, the ethics, the risk taking, the entrepreneurship, the sort of core skills that they will need regardless of subject specialty or role. We set them up for that, and their resilience and social emotional well-being and those pieces that we focus on as well.
Amazing. What have been some of the hurdles that you've had to overcome as you're scaling?
Oof, there's a long list. I mean, probably one, and just thinking about, for those listening, founding their own companies, growing their own thing, one of the things that I struggle with daily is probably overcoming my own impatience. This feeling of there's this amazing opportunity and all these people around the world are also doing amazing things. And look at what their competitor just did. And I need to do all of these things today to try and get ahead of that. And then you ultimately just end up in this kind of negative space. It's really hard to keep up with that. So that would be one of the pieces, is just trying to, and not even delegate, because people always say, you can delegate to other people. But a lot of the time, it's really just around figuring out what is that like one point that's going to have the biggest difference. Like, where is that leverage? Where can I put my time on? Because, you may not always have the ability to delegate to other people. And so, where is that one piece? What can I prioritize right now that is going to have the biggest impact? And that would be one of the big pieces for scale outside of, scaling a global team and, legislation and the regulatory nature that is schools. And I mean, there are so many other pieces, but I think if you're a founder, that's something that, it's just kind of a constant, this, you're on this hamster wheel and you want to go really quickly and you see all of this stuff happening. And so where can you prioritize?
How do you handle that? So is that something that you're really good at, just sort of self-coaching yourself? Do you have someone that's like an advisor, trusted person?
Yeah, I have sort of a group of advisors, all with different strengths, and use them to kind of bounce ideas around with. But it's definitely not a skill that I have. I'm just on my other screen right now. I can see my to-do list, and I'm like, I have not really practiced that this week. So it's kind of on this ongoing evolution, really. So yes, I have advisors. I try and every day be like, what's the one thing I can do today that's going to shift things and focus there. But then some weeks you just get drowning in admin, and then a couple of weeks later you look up and you're like, oh wait, what was I doing again? I need to focus again. And so you kind of go through these loops and then get back on it.
Now, do you see that these type of educational opportunities are also something that can be implemented in higher education? How why are you laughing? Because you're like, "Oh, what do you see into my crystal ball?"
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. I mean, it can be applied really. I mean, it can be applied to most industries. There are a lot of other industries I
Mhm.
think that are already there that are more, rightly or wrongly, very consumer focused and obsessed, and that's what they're really trying to work on. And then you sort of look at education and you go, nope, it is, we run things this way, we will
Yeah.
keep running it this way, and you can join us if that suits you. And they haven't really taken the approach of actually, how do we make this, student centered, consumer focused? What is it? How is this level of personalization? And so, yeah, the same things we see in K 12 absolutely exist in higher ed. And so see that potential in the future. But in terms of, at least for the next, 5+ years, I think staying in K 12 because it has such a compounding impact
Yeah.
for students, and giving them more students access to this, because then they can, I mean, I think even if people have a stronger high school and know themselves and have these skills, if they decide to go over to higher ed, they're likely to pick one that fits them better.
Yes.
And already that's a great step forward. And so, or have a better idea of what it is they might want to do at the end, or just things they're interested in. And it not just be, okay, you've done this grade level, and so now you're off to higher ed and you just want to go to this one because that's where other people have gone to. So I'm going to do the same thing, just giving them that exposure of what else is possible.
Mm.
We also think, when we look at our students, and we, from a college counseling point of view, we're always looking at our students to consider, have they considered going, if they're going to apply internationally, how about they try 2 or more countries?
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah. So if you're in Australia and you're looking to go to the US, great. Have you also considered Europe and Canada?
Mm.
Let's look at those universities as well. Or can you go to Norway? I mean, we're just looking at different options again to just give them that exposure. And they may end up picking and being accepted into an amazing US university, which was their dream school. Perfect. We have a lot of students at NYU, for instance, and that's great. They can go through that journey, but the main thing is they feel really comfortable that they made that choice and it aligns to where they want to go.
Mm.
So again, like a long looping answer to be like, higher ed, absolutely, huge possibility, and would love to at some stage, but the biggest impact right now I see is the earlier years, and so the focus is on, that's.
What is I'm just curious, the business model, because I mean, I would think that perhaps the one-on-one education might be funded in a different way than maybe some of the larger programs. And I know that school budgets are tight, and so I'm sort of wondering where is the funding for your company coming from?
Yeah, so we have a mixture of funding streams. So for largely students coming in, the school operates as a private school, so that's parent fee paying.
Okay.
For that school.
Yep.
We also have some government funding streams. So if we can, we look to access any scholarship accounts, any grants, any of those programs
Mhm.
to support students there to help offset the cost. Or we have the B2B side, in which case the school, the school that's partnering with us would pick that up. So a few different income streams and sort of mechanisms there, but largely it's private pay. And what we've seen is being able to run that model and get results then gives us the ability to work with governments, because government's not going to give you this funding for this great idea just because you think it's a great idea. You need to have several years of student progress to show them. And so that's where, being able to work with more governments now on the scholarship assistance programs and grants, and how do we give our students access to those. And then more recently, over on this side of the world, in New Zealand, having used what we've been able to achieve over the last 5 years to work with them. And then we've just launched a school directly with the government, which is fully tuition free,
Mm.
and the government funds that. And that's been about 3 years in the works of working with them to do that. And that's what we're looking to do in more regions globally. Again, you run this private model, you see and you measure this progress, and you see the student results, and then you get the ability to work with governments and look at how you can bring those costs down for families.
It's I'm just sort of thinking through everything and thinking to myself, the private pay parents, we'll call them,
Mm.
that are maybe in some of these much more rural type of
Mm.
areas. I'm just wondering, are you able to access some of these harder to reach communities because of the nature of your business model? Is the government concerned in any of these countries with reaching these people? Because ultimately that's who you want to get to, right? Because there's
Mm.
such diversity of thought there, and so many other problems to solve, that people that have access to education even now, like, yes, it enhances their education and it's amazing. But some of these people that just don't even have access, like, you want to get there to them.
Mm. Yeah. And I mean, every government we work with in, any state or any country has similar pieces in terms of how do we engage these students? How do we
Yeah.
make sure everyone has access to a great education? And, I never hear anything in opposition of that. It's always the mechanics and the logistics of that. So
Yeah.
great. How do you set that up? What is the funding model going to look like? And then things sort of dry up. So we've been fortunate to gather a lot of these families, both, in large metropolitan areas and rural. Rural is quite interesting because otherwise, usually these families would be online because their other alternative they're looking at is boarding school, but maybe they don't want to send their, 12-year-old off to boarding school. They want them to be at home. And so, naturally have found a lot of families that way who would otherwise be probably searching for boarding schools as the
Mm,
alternative for them.
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, every government has this drive to do it. It's always, particularly, it's an interesting one when you move into the US, and being New Zealand and having success from all of these countries is great and very interesting, but it's always going to come back to, great, what have you done in our state? And what are the results in our state? And so, yeah, and that's why we've been growing so quickly in the US, one, from demand, but two, also that longer term, how do we make this more accessible to more students means we need to prove ourselves in every state,
Yeah.
um,
Oof.
and go on that journey. It's a work in
Oh my
progress.
goodness. So with the outcomes, I can imagine that there's some challenges there too, because even, when I teach online, the classes are, they're long, they're 2.5 hours long. And I
Well,
just wonder to myself, like, how are students, like, how do you stay engaged? I'd be bored listening to me for that
mm,
long. And, online learning is not for everyone. Classroom learning is
yeah.
not for everyone either. So are there overall, I know that there's positive outcomes overall, but are there some challenges within that? You want to get this learning to maybe these more remote areas. The only way to do it is via technology, but that might not be how a student would learn. So how do you sort
Yeah.
of bridge that?
Yeah, there's a number of things. I think exactly when you're thinking about that online space, there's a lot of delivery that can be done more lecture style, or it's very large classes, or there's a lot of asynchronous learning that goes on.
Mm.
All of our classes are synchronous. Class size on average is 11 students.
Mhm.
And most classes, and I think our longest class is probably 90 minutes.
Yeah.
Most of our classes are about 60 minutes. So,
Mhm.
you know, shorter classes, very, small in the scheme of things classes, which means that you can lean a lot more into the discussion, interactivity. We look at, the technology we've built to make, to allow teachers to easily spin up more interactive activities for the class. Everyone has their individual workbooks. Teachers can live monitor what they're doing. to have that mixture of group discussion, but it's not just a passive, I'm going to sit here and be talked to and then wait to get called on. It's everyone working through these different activities. And so it's much more interactive and trying to bridge that, um, bridge that physical and digital realm and get students really engaged in what they're doing. And so they're, actively, whilst the class might be happening here, they've got screen open here and they're working through all these different activities. They're all working through it. There's discussion. We've really leaned into how we make that more interactive. At the same time, we have our AI learning assistant, which is available and sits down in the corner for students should they need it. And we find that, what's been interesting with that one is I thought students would use it probably more for revision after class, but I find that students use it a lot in class, just more on like comprehension, quick questions, things they're not going to interrupt the class to ask or may not feel comfortable doing so. And so they can go and ask that there. And so, much more like you are in the class, you are doing the things than just, being able to sit back and let it wash over you.
It's so fascinating. I can also see this really having application for adult learning. I mean, even now I talk to a lot of my friends and we're like, we wish that we could go back to school now. Now that we know what we know about life, like I want to go back and, learn some more things. And you can take these online courses and I don't know. I've signed up for so many of them and I get halfway through and then I just don't complete them. So I see this really being a new mode, but it has to be in a different way than some of these classes are given right now because they're boring. It's boring to sit and watch someone lecture, even say, okay, go do the exercise, come back. It's awful. I know that there's opportunity everywhere. And you just said before, how do you even choose what the right opportunity is? So with that, as sort of the backdrop, where do you see your company going and growing in the future?
I mean, all of our growth, probably to preface it, is when we look at growth, there is what growth are we driving? And so I see in terms of us being, the largest global online school and this, dominant force, particularly in the US market, where education is particularly fragmented, and supporting students to get wherever, they wish to go. And we will be that school to support them. But we always keep this element of our strategy open for actually what students request and what students want and where they push back. And I mean, even I've had students this week who've been we've been bouncing back and forth on technology ideas. And so some of the technology, they're like, oh, could we do it this way? And I'm like, great, we can build it that way.
Wow.
And so I have this vision because I know what education can be and what we've been able to do. And I think just, having more students being able to access that and then much more around the global community component, because that's so important in terms of just that different perspectives and students being in a classroom with students around the world. So like our US students are in a classroom with students from Europe, from Japan, from Australia, Canada, it depends on the time zone. And, think of the richness of discussions they're having, which usually you only get kind of when you move into higher ed. But we have that at high school. But, this global school, this global community and continuing to grow in that space and connecting students around the world, regardless of where they're based and proving out more of these outcomes on a larger scale. But yet there's always going to be this element of our students, come forward and because there's a kind of constant feedback loop and go, actually, we think you should do classes that are fully AI-led. I don't think they would do that. I'd say kids are probably more skeptical of AI than adults are. But
I agree with you.
They're a bit more anti it than you'd probably expect. But if they said that, then great. Like we'd launch into that, or we'd look at more physical hubs, or they want more community meetups. They want more opportunities to connect in person with their peers. Great, we'll create smaller hubs. So there is this what we can be, but then always having this little element of what do our students need? Because ultimately, and what I really try and keep us always focused on the team and our culture is like we are here for our students and their future. So us having too many preconceived notions of what they need is kind of those, like, we can strongly hold, like, have this opinion loosely held, because then we need to be able to adapt to the students. And, the world that they're growing up in is incredibly different, and they may want, different subjects. They may want to do education differently. I mean, we've
Yeah.
picked some bits that don't work, and been able to pull it apart, and that's got our current model. But our students will help inform, the next model, and they're constantly giving feedback on that.
Well, a couple of things. First of all, it's very much an entrepreneurial approach
Yeah,
to education, which you're doing is like the antithesis of the way that the education system, at least what I'm
yeah,
familiar with in the United States, is set up, where it's like we set all of the rules, and you students, you follow. you're
yeah,
you're giving the power to the students, which are very much like customers, right?
yeah,
So in as you're building a company, might have a very, as you said, loosely held idea of what the solution is, but if you get too far away from
yeah,
speaking to customers, you're going to go awry. And I
yeah,
love that you're talking about how you were just talking to students
yeah.
yesterday. Like, you're the founder, you're the visionary, you're setting the stage for all of this, and you're talking to students.
Mm, yeah.
Not many business owners are continuing to talk to students or customers, and that's really where they go wrong.
Yeah, you've got to, every day there would be, a different customer per se, be that a parent, be it a student, be it, a partnership. Like, you've really got to stay. I mean, I earlier this week was having sessions with a number of different industry partners, and that was just more discovery sessions. And we're quite large now in terms of that. You're never too big
Yeah.
to be running, discovery sessions. Like, what are your pain points in education? Where are your kids struggling? What could this look like for them? We have what we offer, great, but if you don't sit and listen to them, then you're just going to keep building, what you think is right. So,
Mm.
yeah, always making time for that, for that loop, and try and keep a pretty open door with, students and teachers and parents and everyone to just come in and give me ideas, which is why I end up in this overwhelming to-do list probably.
I
Yeah.
know, and it's funny too, because I'm thinking, even, I imagine that you also do want to be talking about the industries that are up and coming, all of the organizations that are starting, because that's where you want to also be able to make that connection point. You want to understand, what
Mm,
are these employers of the future going to
yeah.
need when it comes to employees. And
Yeah.
so you have such a humongous group of stakeholders that you have to
Yeah.
constantly be speaking to. So I can't even imagine how busy you are. And if people want to get in touch with you, talk to you, learn more about not only what you're doing and how you're building this incredible or revolutionizing, education, honestly, which it needs to be revolutionized.
Mm,
How can they get in touch with you, even just to talk about what it's like to grow and scale a
mm.
global company with all of these different intricate pieces? How can they get in touch with you?
Yes, and as we were talking, and I just had this thought that just popped into my head. I realized that one thing I didn't talk about, we just launched this program, small tangent, and then I'll share where to contact me. We just launched this program. We partnered with a venture capital firm, which is very exciting, and they are funding essentially 5 students for their last year of high school, and partnering them with mentors to launch their first business by the time they graduate.
Wow.
So we just launched that last week, which is, we were talking about entrepreneurship, and it popped back into my head. So again, one of those, just working and understanding what, where people want to go. In terms of getting in contact with me, LinkedIn is probably the best place. I attempt to stay active on there, but usually the inbox there, or send me a message, and always happy to catch up with people.
Amazing, amazing. And is there any other type of companies or organizations that you would like to share, that you would like to get in touch with or build relationships with? This is a platform. It's not the biggest platform in the world, but just sort of putting that out there for you.
Yeah, I'd love to work with, yeah, I'm always looking to work with more, yeah, governments, and then schools, where we might be able to partner and be that be that solution for them if they're looking for that extension or filling a teacher shortage gap. So that, and then finally, if anyone, because usually there's a teacher in the family, if you have a teacher in your family who maybe, is looking for something different, then send them my way because I am always looking for amazing teachers.
Amazing. Penelope, I just took a look at the time and, we're 46 minutes in and I cannot believe it. So much more to talk about. I really, truly, deeply love what it is that you're doing. I talk about it all the time, how the education system needs to change. So I really, really loved this conversation. And thank you so much for spending your early morning with me.
Thank you so much for having me. That was great. I mean, time flew by. So yes, you even got me pre-coffee. So looking forward to going and having a coffee now.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
If this conversation moved you, inspired you, or made you think differently, please take a moment to leave a 5-star rating and review. It's not just about boosting the show, it's about amplifying the voices of women entrepreneurs who are leading with vision, building with purpose, and shaping what's next. We need more of these conversations in the world right now, don't you think? And if someone came to mind while you were listening, someone who matters to you, send this episode to them. If there's something on your mind about leadership, legacy, or what's next, I want to hear it. Head to sheleadsmedia.com/voice and leave a voice memo or note. Your insight might just help shape a future episode. Make sure to follow the show and come back next week for more conversations you won't hear anywhere else. Thank you so much for listening.
Podcaststhatmatter.org.
This is the She Leads Podcast Network.